Spend my days with a woman unkind, smoke my stuff and drink all my wine in my heart. Someone told me there's a girl out there with love in her eyes and flowers in her hair.
Good morning, ACSC. Good morning, ACSC. All right, good morning. Good morning, ACSC. How's everyone doing? Yeah, come on in. Don't be shy. Hey, good morning, everyone, and welcome back from the holiday break. Hope everyone had a good time off and enjoyed some downtime without a couple hundred pages of reading every night. It's my pleasure to go ahead and introduce to you our first speaker in Wood Auditorium for LEDX. I'm going to introduce to you today Mr. Andy Christiansen. He's the co-founder and CEO of Capital 7. He's a leadership consultant who's worked with organizations such as Coca-Cola, Chick-fil-A, Newell Rubbermaid, the Mattress Firm, Label Live, and Northwestern Mutual. Before consulting, Andy worked in the beverage industry and invented actually the first ever zero-calorie fruit-flavored spring water, Fruit 2.0. You may have heard of this. It's done quite well. Another fun fact about Andy before he takes the stage, he's actually an adventure hiker and likes to get in at least a 14er a year, which I've learned is actually a 14,000 foot mountain. Next on his agenda is Mount Whitney. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome to the stage Mr. Andy Christiansen.
Thanks, everyone. Hey, you guys have been on break. Your brains, how you feeling? We engaged? Not yet? We're getting there? All right. I like it. Hey, so I'm just curious, how many for Georgia, national championship? Alabama? All right, I'm from Atlanta, so you probably know where I'm going. Sorry to the Alabama fans, but you guys have enough championships. Hey, would you guys all do me a favor, and everybody just stand up very briefly, just everybody to your feet. I want us to congratulate one another in a moment for what appears to be 2017 was really a great year as peacekeeping goes, right? I mean, for the most part. And those of you that are in business, it was a pretty good economy last year. So how about a round of applause for everyone here? All right. And if you're 35 and older, please sit down, because I know you're getting tired. All right, 30, 35, 34 and younger, please stay standing. Come on, no cheating. 34 and younger, 34 and younger. Look around, that's about 20% of the room. All right? Hey, congratulations to our future leaders. Let's give them a round of applause. Right here. And you can be seated unless you're 22 and younger. Okay, so those were our millennials. Do we not have any centennials that are 22 years and younger? Really? Wayne, you're 22? No? Okay. So, we're going to talk about millennials and centennials. Day in the life of a millennial. Wakes up in Soho, New York. He has 5 roommates. And he just got from his parents, 25 years old, a hoverboard. And it's springtime, so he's going to go off to work over in Tribeca. Man bun flailing behind him, navigating some foot traffic. He has to pull over and take a puff on his vape, his e-cigarette. And he's on his way to Tribeca Roasters to get a flat white. That's a modern coffee, for those of you that don't know what flat white is. And before he gets there, he has a sharp memory shock in his brain that he can't go to work today because he has not finished binge watching the second half of the second season of Stranger Things. And so he gets his flat white, sips it down, eats a biscuit, and back home he goes to complete something that's very, very important to him. What do you make of that? Irresponsible or responsible? To a millennial, work-life balance is extraordinarily important. But they also know they need to work to pay the rent because, you know, it's expensive in New York City. So that is what a lot of us look at with millennials, and we call them lazy, entitled, lacking in social skills. They are to blame, many people think, for the downfall of some of our economy right now. Like Applebee's has cut their stores in half. And they blame millennials because millennials want to eat more organic, more homegrown food. Okay? Right or wrong, good or bad, we don't know. But lazy, entitled, and lacking social skills, is it accurate? Is it inaccurate? Does it offend anyone? Are some of you going, yep, that's what they are? So are there some facts? You know, 42% of millennials still live with their parents. Millennials are 34, roughly 35 to 23 years old, okay? And over half of them that are employed feel like they should get a promotion within the first 2 years, whether they deserve it or not. Maybe a little outgrowth from all the participation trophies that every kid gets, even if they're a bench warmer. I don't know. And in terms of lacking social skills, do you know that the average millennial, how many hours a day? 6 on their smartphone, smart device. That's over 1/3 of awoken hours they're on their phones. So what are we to do if millennials are lazy, entitled, and lacking social skills? Are we screwed? I work mostly with millennials with the work I do, and I hear this all the time. You know, we're screwed. These guys are not going to take us to the promised land. Because if we get attacked by Russia or China, will they fight? I know you in this room will, right? That are in active duty. But what about the rest of our culture? What are we going to do? Will they expect mom and dad to rescue them and fight for them? Right? Will they have the social skills to negotiate out of a bad problem? Or maybe they get us into a bad problem because they don't know when to stop talking about things that they shouldn't talk about. I mean, really, are we screwed? So I thought I'd give you a picture, you know, it speaks 1,000 words, and see if you can relate to this, because I think this generation is going to take us to a bad place. Look at them just sitting around. She's looking at some iPad. I don't know. They're going to these festivals. They're lazy, these people, this generation. Does that look entitled to you? Mom and dad sending them money, not a care in the world. Yeah? Lacking social skills? How about this guy or gal? How to win friends and influence people. Depends on what you're trying to win and influence, huh? So what do you think? Is this generation bad news? You see what I did there? You know, this generation, Woodstock, this is 1969. These are boomers. And the things that were said about them were horrific. They're going to run us to ruin. They are not going to fight. They're war protesters. All kinds of bad things. I could put quote after quote after quote. They call this the me generation. And they call millennials the me generation. Interesting. So do you see the irony and the dilemma? We'll get into that a little bit more. Just a couple statements that I find interesting. Before you go and criticize the younger generation, just remember who raised them. Okay? And self-criticism or criticism is just a form of self-boasting. Be careful. Be careful that we're not trying to beat up the pilot that's flying the ship, the bird that we're on. Right? Millennials are our future. So we've got to figure out, are they bad news? Are you guys, or are you not? And if you are, we've got to adjust. And if you're not, we better start supporting you and equipping you instead of just criticizing, right? I love my friend Wayne. Wayne the Bear Kinsel says, I heard this last night, he said, we've got to stop calling them out and start calling them up. We could just close right there and just go do it, but let me give you a little bit more to go on. All right? Wouldn't that be great? Like, that was awesome. It was like 7 minutes. Super TED Talk, LEDX. One of my favorite thought leaders you'll hear this afternoon, and you all should listen to General Quast. He's amazing. He says this generation is living in some of the most dangerous times for the Republic, right? What we have worked so hard to maintain and are spreading around the world could be lost in a generation if, and I like what he also says, if we've not given them, this generation, let's call it Millennials and Centennials that stood at the end, are we giving them the space to tinker, explore, innovate, and keep up with the changes around our world? Right? Are we supporting you guys to the degree you need it? I believe this, if you want to know my opinion. Millennials don't suck. You're just old. I mean, you remember when you were growing up, that neighbor, this generation. I mean, I remember that neighbor, hundreds of them. They're always complaining about the next generation. And so were the people older than them when they were kids. It's just what we do. So is it really a fouled up generation, or it's just 5 to 10% and every generation has it? Right? I showed you the boomers. They had their 5 to 10%. You know, divorce rate was 25% until boomers got married, and it's at 50, and it's hovered there ever since. One generation. So why are we beating up so much on millennials? Right? I could get into drug use and all kinds of stuff because they were a little bit older than me, and I remember hearing all this crap going, I don't want to be one of them. Glad I'm a baby buster. And now I've kind of gotten looped into them, so I don't know. But hey, it's again only 5 to 10%, so what are we saying? Let's get busy not focusing on the 5 to 10, but the 95%. Fair enough? Stop hurting. We need to start helping. So Andy, what do you suggest? I'm glad you asked. I think first we have to understand this age that we're in. You've heard that we're in an information age, right? But are we also in a misinformation age? And I've been saying this way before fake news, because that almost seems like it's political. But isn't it true? If information goes up, misinformation is just going to go up, right? It's an opportunity to catalyze on something. How about this? 35,000 decisions you and I make every day, minor ones to major ones. Whoa, that's heavy duty. So what do we do with that? I believe, based on what we all have to do, especially with millennials, we've lost some time, and we need to catch up. So let me give you a few things I think will help. I want to just tell you a quick story. I got invited to go to Mildenhall, and I didn't know it at the time, but it was on my bucket list. It just wasn't on there. But once I went and then came back home, I'm like, I'm crossing out number 4, and that's going in number 4 and checking it off. It was an incredible experience. One of the things I remember the most was I got asked if I wanted to go up in a flight. Is that a trick question? I mean, I'm adventurous. I climb these mountains. I love it. And so I went up, and those of you that have done this, it's really amazing. I got up at 2:30 in the morning, get into pre-check, pre-flight, whatever you guys call that, at like 4 in the morning, and then we go do the event, the flight, and then we come back and do post-flight, and I'm sitting there before we went up in the plane in pre-brief, and there's 3 25-year-olds, and I'm looking around going, where's the boss? Because I'm thinking, we're about to go in an airplane. Certainly someone's not giving you guys the key to that multi-million-dollar bird. There must be somebody a little bit older. Nope. I kept looking at the door, and then finally we go outside. We're walking up to the plane, and I'm thinking, well, maybe that person's in the plane. They're probably the pilot. They don't need to go through pre-brief. So I see this look like a 19-year-old young woman walks up in uniform. Well, I don't think that's the boss. It could be, but she's the boom operator. So I'm like, she's even younger. I'm in trouble. I don't know if I feel safe. And I got to tell you, lazy, entitled, and lacking social skills, these 4 were up at dark 30 in the morning. They're not lazy. Taking ownership of a multi-million-dollar plane, that's not entitled. They're leading well. and their social skills, I'm up in the plane and the pilot puts it on cruise. That's what I love about the military. You guys are so honoring. He turns around and says, reaches into his backpack, pulls out a book, pulls out a pen, and he looks at me. He says, I get choked up just thinking about it. But he looks at me and he says, sir, would you sign your book for me? Huh? I mean, social skills. I want these guys running the world, running our country. They're awesome. Millennials. Hello. I know you guys already know they're awesome here, but we have to spread this out. We have to give the gift that keeps on giving, which I believe is mentoring. Getting with a person one-to-one, eyeball to eyeball. It could even be ear to ear. And transferring what you know so well to someone else. Or more importantly, just finding out what's important to them and helping them achieve it. Right? It's simple. But one thing that gets in the way before we get into practical tools is this FAE. I know you guys like acronyms, so here you go. Everything's an acronym in the military. Fundamental attribution error. Well, that sounds pretty boring. It is kind of boring. But it's true. This is what we do. Homer's got it figured out. Everyone's stupid except me. You ever see yourself doing this? I know I do it. If I do something wrong, I minimize it. Like, well, you know, only happens every so often. If I trip on the sidewalk, I look down, I blame the sidewalk. It wasn't me. If I see you trip, I kind of go, idiot.